My father kicked me out of my apartment. Now it will be for your sister and her husband. If you don't like it, that's not my problem. So I stopped paying the rent, and when they called me furious, I told them, it's not my problem. My name is Ivan, I'm 29 years old, and for my entire life, I have felt like I am nothing more than a puppet in my family's hands. From a young age, my parents, Jose and Beatriz, taught me that family is the most important thing, that one must sacrifice for their own, no matter what. We gave you everything, Ivan. Now it's your turn to return the favor. They would always tell me. And I, like an obedient child, grew up believing that was the absolute truth. I never questioned anything. If they asked, I gave. If they ordered, I obeyed. That's how it always was. I grew up in a humble home, but my parents always had great expectations for me. Not for my sister Susanna, who is 2 years younger than me, but for me. Ever since I was a teenager, they repeated that I would be the one to carry the family forward. You are the man, Ivan. You have to carry the weight of it all, my dad Jose would say. While my mom Beatriz would nod with a look that allowed no reply. Susanna, on the other hand, was always the spoiled one. If she wanted something, she got it. If she made a mistake, there were no consequences. I, in contrast, lived under a microscope. Everything I did had to be perfect, because the family depended on me. When I finished high school, I worked and studied at the same time to pay for my degree in business administration. It wasn't easy, but I did it. I got a good job at a logistics company, and over time, my salary started to grow. I was proud of myself, but that pride was short-lived. As soon as my parents found out I was earning good money, they started asking me for it. First, it was for small things. Ivan, help us with the electricity bill, it's very expensive this month. Then the requests became bigger. We need to replace the refrigerator. Give your parents a hand. And I, as always, obeyed. I believed it was my duty, that it was what a good son did. Soon, my parents practically moved into my wallet. I paid the rent for their house, the utilities, even their personal expenses. If my mom wanted a new dress, I paid for it. If my dad wanted to fix the car, I provided the money. And not only that, I also paid for things for Susanna. Clothes, her cell phone. Even her outings with her friends. She's your sister, Ivan. You have to help her, they would tell me. And I, like an idiot, kept saying yes. Don't get me wrong. I loved my family. I thought everything I was doing was out of love, because they had raised me and given me a roof over my head. But over time, I began to realize there was no reciprocity. They never asked how I was. They never thanked me, they never acknowledged my effort. To them, I was a money machine, and if I didn't comply, they made me feel like the worst son in the world. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. That was my mom's favorite phrase whenever I dared to hesitate. I lived in a small but comfortable apartment that I rented when I got my first promotion. It was my space, my refuge. There, I could rest from work and, for a few hours, forget about my family's demands. But even that didn't last long. Everything changed when Susanna got married. Susanna had always been the pampered child of the house. In her 20s. She announced she was marrying Fabian, a guy who, to be honest, I never liked. Not because he was a bad person, but because he was lazy. Fabian had lost his job a couple of years ago and, instead of looking for another one, lived off small business ventures that never worked out. But Susanna was in love, and my parents adored him. He's a good guy, he just needs a chance, they said. I wasn't so sure, but as always, I kept quiet. When they announced the wedding, my parents didn't take long to call me. Ivan, your sister's wedding has to be perfect. It's the most important day of her life, and you have to help, my dad told me over the phone. They didn't ask if I could, they didn't ask if I wanted to. They simply took it for granted that I would provide the money. And as always, I agreed. I paid for the venue, the catering, Susanna's dress, even the floral arrangements. Every time I looked at my bank account, I felt a knot in my stomach, but I kept telling myself it was the right thing to do. Family helps family, I would tell myself. Parroting the words my parents had drilled into my head since I was a child. The wedding was a success, at least for them. Susanna was radiant. Fabian smiled as if he were the king of the world. And my parents couldn't stop bragging about how perfect everything had turned out. Nobody thanked me, not a text, not a word. Instead, my mom had the nerve to tell me while we were toasting. I hope you weren't short on the payment, Yvonne, because this can't fail. I swallowed my anger and moved on. A few months later, Susanna announced she was pregnant. The news made me happy because I always wanted to be a good brother and now a good uncle. But along with the good news came bad news. Fabian was still unemployed. Not only that, but he had no intention of looking for a job. I'm waiting for a good opportunity, he would say while spending his days playing video games or going out with his friends. Susanna, on the other hand, didn't seem bothered. Fabian is a busy man. Yvonne, not everyone has your luck with work, she told me once, as if my salary were a gift from heaven and not the result of years of hard work. Susanna and Fabian's situation began to get complicated. They couldn't pay their rent, and their apartment was a disaster. My parents, as always, had the solution. Yvonne, your sister needs help. They can't raise a baby in those conditions, my mom told me in one of her many calls. And as always, I ended up sending them money to cover their expenses. But this time, things were about to cross a line that not even I, with all my patience, could tolerate. It was a Friday night, and I was in my apartment relaxing after an exhausting week. I had made a simple dinner and was watching a movie when I heard the noise of a truck outside. I didn't think much of it until someone knocked forcefully on the door. I got up, confused. And when I opened it, I froze. In front of my door was a moving truck, and next to it stood my parents, Susanna, and Fabian. Behind them, several men were unloading furniture, boxes, a crib, even a double bed. Yvonne, make way for the movers, said my dad, Jose, without even looking me in the eye. He walked into the apartment as if he owned it, followed by my mom, Susanna, and Fabian, who was carrying a box with a mocking smile. What is going on? I asked, my heart pounding. No one answered me. The movers started bringing things into the apartment, a table, chairs, clothes. Even a lamp I recognized as the one Susanna had in her old room. Hey, can someone explain what is happening? I repeated, raising my voice. My dad finally turned to me with that authoritarian look he always used to silence me. This apartment is now for Susanna and Fabian, he said as if he were announcing the weather. They need a place to raise the baby, and you have the means to find another place for yourself. If you don't like it, it's not my problem. It's your obligation as a brother. I was in shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had rented that apartment with my money, with my effort. It was my home. And now, without consulting me, without even asking me, they were kicking me out as if I were an annoying tenant. What? This is my apartment. I pay the rent. I pay for everything here. I yelled, feeling the rage begin to boil inside me. My dad laughed. A cold, dismissive laugh. And we are your family, Yvonne. This is what you do for family. Pack your things and go. Don't make this harder than it has to be. My mom, Beatrice, came over and put a hand on my shoulder, but there was no warmth in her gesture. Yvonne, don't be selfish. Your sister is pregnant, she needs a stable place. You're young, you can manage. Looking at me with a mocking smile. They don't even respect you with your money, loser. Get out, she said without a shred of remorse. Fabian, next to her, let out a laugh. Seriously? You're kicking me out of my own apartment? I said, my voice trembling with fury. This is crazy. You have no right. Yvonne, don't be dramatic, my dad said, approaching me with that intimidating attitude he always used. You do what we tell you. It's always been that way, and it's going to stay that way. Pack your things and leave the space for your sister. No, I said for the first time in my life. The word came out on its own, as if something inside me had finally broken. I'm not leaving. This is my apartment. I pay for it. I maintain it. If you want Susanna to live here, let Fabian get a job and pay the rent. The silence that followed was tense. My dad looked at me as if I had slapped him. My mom's eyes widened, and Susanna let out a sarcastic laugh. You, telling us what to do. Please, Yvonne, don't be ridiculous, she said. You've always been the weak one in the family. Do as you're told and leave us alone. Fabian took a step towards me, puffing out his chest as if to intimidate me. Listen to your dad, Yvonne. Don't make this uglier than it already is. The rage I felt was like a wildfire. For years I had put up with their demands, their humiliations, their taunts. I had given them everything. And now they were treating me as if I was worthless. But in that moment, something changed. I was not going to be their puppet anymore. But my father told the movers to take my things out. And they moved my bed and my furniture to the entrance of the apartment building. They were kicking me out, and I couldn't do anything. It was me alone against four. The argument dragged on for several minutes. My dad yelled, my mom begged me to see reason. Susanna insulted me, and Fabian continued with his neighborhood thug attitude. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was fed up. Finally, my dad gave me an ultimatum. You have until tomorrow to leave, or we'll remove you ourselves. I said nothing more. I went to my room, closed the door, and started packing my things. Not because I was scared, but because I knew I wasn't going to win that battle. They were four, and I was alone. But as I packed my clothes into a suitcase, I made a decision. This would be the last time they would humiliate me. I moved into a smaller apartment I found at the last minute. It wasn't as nice as the previous one, but it was mine, and that was enough. As I unpacked, I felt a mix of anger and relief. I had been a puppet my whole life, but that was over. I was not going to be my family's wallet anymore. The first thing I did was open my banking app. I canceled all the automatic payments for the apartment they had taken from me, the rent, the electricity, the water, the internet, everything. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, then they could face the consequences. I didn't feel guilty. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was taking control. I went to bed that night with a strange feeling, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I knew trouble was coming, but I was ready to face it. A month later, my phone started ringing non-stop. It was Susanna. When I answered, her voice was full of fury. Yvonne, you're a damn selfish bastard. They cut off the power and water in the apartment. The landlord came and gave us 5 days to pay the rent, or we'll be evicted. What the hell did you do? I smiled to myself. Tell Fabian to get a job and pay the rent, I replied calmly. That stopped being my apartment when you threw me out like a dog. That doesn't matter. Susanna screamed. You have to pay. It's your obligation. You've always paid for everything. You can't just stop now. My obligation. I repeated, feeling the anger ignite again. My obligation ended when you humiliated me and kicked me out of my own house. If you want the apartment, pay for it yourself. Or better yet, have Fabian get off his butt and do something for his family. Susanna became hysterical. You're a monster. I'm going to talk to Mom and Dad. And I swear you're going to regret this. Go ahead, I said before hanging up. Not even 30 minutes passed before my phone rang again. This time it was my dad, Jose. His voice was a roar. Yvonne. You are so irresponsible. How dare you leave your sister on the street? It's your obligation to support the family. Activate the payments right now. No. I replied with a firmness I had never felt before. I'm tired of being everyone's bank. You treated me like trash, you humiliated me, you kicked me out of my own apartment. And now you want me to keep paying? No, find another fool to support your whims. Don't make me angry, Yvonne, my dad shouted. If you don't pay, you can forget about us. You are not part of this family. My mom joined the call, crying. Yvonne, how can you be so ungrateful? We gave you everything, and now you're leaving your sister homeless with a baby on the way. You're a monster. Her words hurt, but not as much as before. I no longer felt guilty. Perfect, I said with a calmness that disconcerted them. If I'm no longer part of this family, then your bills are no longer my problem. I hung up the phone before they could respond. They kept calling for hours, but I didn't answer. I went into my online banking and canceled the last remaining automatic payments, the ones for my parents' house. If they wanted to live without me, they could do it for real. I turned off my phone and sat on the sofa in my small apartment. It was a modest place, with basic furniture and bare walls, but for the first time in a long time, I felt it was mine. There was no one telling me what to do, no one demanding my money, no one treating me like an ATM. I felt free, but there was also a knot in my chest. After all, they were my family. I had loved them. I had helped them for years, and now they treated me as if I was worthless. Anger and sadness were mixed, but the anger was winning. I was not going to let them manipulate me anymore. 2 weeks later, I found out that Susanna and Fabian had been evicted. The landlord showed no mercy, he gave them the 5 days he had promised, and when they didn't pay, he had the locks changed. Susanna, with her advanced pregnancy, and Fabian, with his usual attitude, had to quickly gather their things and move into my parents' house. I felt no pity. Maybe I should have. For the baby on the way, but I couldn't. Not after everything they had done to me. My parents' house was in no better condition. Since I had cancelled the automatic payments for the rent and utilities, they were also in trouble. My dad, who had always relied on my money to maintain his lifestyle, had no savings. My mom, who spent without thinking because Yvonne always pays, was desperate. And Susanna and Fabian, who had never had to worry about anything, now depended on a house that was about to collapse under the weight of its debts. I didn't hear from them directly for a while. I blocked their numbers to have some peace. But rumors reached me through acquaintances and neighbors. Your sister is furious with you, a mutual friend once told me. She says it's your fault they're ruined. I laughed. My fault? They had kicked me out of my own apartment. They had humiliated me. They had treated me like trash. If anyone was to blame, it was them. A month after Susanna's eviction, I was in my new apartment making coffee one morning when someone pounded on the door so hard I thought they would knock it down. I opened it, and there they were. My dad Jose with his face red with fury, my mom Beatriz with her eyes swollen from crying so much, Susanna with her pregnant belly and a look of pure hatred. And Fabian with that thuggish attitude that irritated me so much. They didn't greet me, they didn't ask for permission. They entered as if they owned the place. Yvonne, you are so ungrateful. My dad began, pointing a finger at me. It's your fault we were all evicted, the house, the apartment, everything. And now your sister has nowhere to live with her baby. How can you be so selfish? Your whims, and you call me selfish because I finally said enough. My mom approached with tears in her eyes. Yvonne, please, we're your family. You can't do this to us. Your nephew needs a home. When Susanna called me a loser and told me to get out. Did you care about all the money you took from me, everything I did for you without so much as a thank you? You can't just stop paying for everything because you threw a tantrum. It's your fault we're on the street. My fault. I said, almost laughing at how absurd it sounded. Tell Fabian to get a job. To get off the couch and do something for his son. That apartment was mine, Susanna. I paid for it, and you, with your husband and your parents, threw me out like a dog. Now you face the consequences. Fabian, who had been quiet until then, stepped towards me, puffing out his chest. Watch what you say, Yvonne. Don't get smart. Turn the payments back on right now. Or it's not going to go well for you. I looked him in the eye without backing down. For the first time, I felt no fear. And what are you going to do, Fabian? Hit me? But I swear I'm not paying another cent. If you want money, get it yourselves. I'm not your bank anymore. The argument got so heated that for a moment I thought Fabian was going to lunge at me. My dad stopped him, but not because he wanted to avoid a fight, but because he knew they wouldn't gain anything with violence. Yvonne, this isn't over, my dad said, his voice trembling with rage. You are a disgrace to this family. We don't want to see you again. Perfect, I replied, opening the door wide. Then leave my house and don't look for me again. Susanna started screaming. My mom started crying, and Fabian started muttering insults, but there was nothing they could do. Finally, they gave up and left. As I watched their silhouettes disappear down the hallway, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. I had lost my family, but at the same time, I had found myself. A month later, I learned that my parents, Susanna, and Fabian had ended up moving into a small, dilapidated apartment on the outskirts of the city. Fabian, for the first time in years, had to look for a job. It wasn't much, a delivery job that barely paid enough to support all of them. But it was something. My parents, who had always lived off my money, now had to adjust to a much more modest life. Susanna, I was told, was furious. But she had no one to blame but herself and her husband. I cut off all contact with them. I blocked their numbers, deleted their messages, and when anyone asked about them, I simply changed the subject. It wasn't easy. Sometimes at night, I would wonder if I had done the right thing. After all, they were my family. But then I would remember the humiliations, the taunts, the way they treated me as if I was worthless, and that doubt would disappear. Today, I can say that I am free. I am no one's puppet. I am no one's bank. I am Yvonne, and for the first time in my life, I am living for myself. Subscribe for more daily stories.